From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. Leading the news tonight, Vice President Kamala Harris was in Selma Sunday for the 59th commemoration of Bloody Sunday and the annual Bridge Crossing Jubilee. Harris was one of dozens of national political officials who participated in the various services and events honoring the foot soldiers who were beaten by troopers for trying to publicly protest being denied the right to vote. Standing before the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the Vice President recounted that struggle and how it was the spark needed to pass the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
They marched peacefully. They knew violence against them was inevitable. They knew they would be surrounded by troopers with nightsticks. They knew they might be trampled by horses. Even so, they marched forward. But they were forced to retreat. And yet, they would not be deterred, defeated, or denied. And they returned to this bridge while many were still bound in bandages because they knew what was on the other side. A promise of a future that was more equal, more just, and more free. And yes, they crossed this bridge. And in so doing, they also built a bridge. They brought together white Americans, black Americans, all sorts of Americans, and ministers and rabbis and members of SCLC and SNCC and folks of all ages and backgrounds. And less than 6 months later, the Voting Rights Act of 1964 was signed into law. The story of Selma, a story of our nation. Freedom is fundamental to the promise of America. Freedom is not to be given. It is not to be bestowed. It is ours by right. And the power behind the promise of freedom has always been in the faith of her people.
The Vice President also railed against the recent Alabama Supreme Court ruling saying that frozen embryos are to be considered children under state law. That ruling, of course, has led IVF clinics across the state to pause their services, leaving prospective parents in limbo. Harris did not mention the fact that Alabama lawmakers have been working ever since that ruling to pass legislation protecting IVF clinics and patients. So, where are we in that process? Last week, the House and Senate passed similar measures to offer protections to IVF clinics and prospective parents. Both bills are now scheduled for committee consideration in their other chamber on Tuesday. The Senate Health Committee will take up House Bill 237 from Representative Terry Collins at its standing meeting tomorrow at 11 in room 304. And at 11:30, the House Health Committee will take up Senate Bill 159 in room 206. That's from State Senator Tim Melson. Both bills are expected to advance, although amendments or substitutes are possible given the nature of this process. The bills would then go to the second chamber for final consideration, either on Wednesday or on Thursday. As I mentioned, the bills are similar but not identical. One key difference is the inclusion of protection for IVF goods in the in the House version of the bill. A change in the Senate version removed that goods provision, which some say leaves out medical device companies crucial to the IVF process. Of course, we will be watching these developments closely and keeping you updated here on Capitol Journal. On to the issue of gambling. As you may remember, the House passed a comprehensive lottery, casino, and sports betting package 2.5 weeks ago. That plan has now stalled in the Senate after a confusing committee meeting last week. But senators are prepared to try again tomorrow. A meeting of the Senate Tourism Committee is set for 2 o'clock on Tuesday. And on the agenda are House Bills 151 and 152, the combined gambling package from the House. The committee could advance the bills, could set them aside, amend them, or more likely substitute them with alternative legislation drafted in the Senate. Minority Leader Bobby Singleton said a scaled-down version is likely to crop up.
Well, look here. I have not been in on all the conversations. You know, I've been around here for 20 plus years. I, introduced one of the first bingo bills that got passed for Greene in Macon County back in 2002. I think that we got a lot of people who are in the room who really don't understand the process, who really don't understand what's going on. And I must admit that I did meet with them. And there are some things being put on the table. Hopefully that over the weekend that we can come back with a draft, put it in committee by Tuesday, and be something that we can vote on. I like what the House put out. If we can take what the House did and move it forward, but right now it doesn't seem that that's going to be the issue here. Be the solution. So what we need to do is just to come up with something where everybody's included. I have not read what it is, but I do understand that there may be something coming on Tuesday. I think it's a rewrite, personally. I think it's a rewrite from what the House has passed, but I have not seen it, so therefore I can't be certain of what it is. I'm going to be advocating for what the House passed. That's what I'll be advocating for.
Today is Read Across America Day, and per tradition, Governor Kay Ivey visited a school to read to students and encourage them to pick up reading habits of their own. This year's event took her to Opp in Covington County to visit with the students and teachers of Opp Elementary School.
Just like you, I sat at a desk with big dreams and want to learn, but a lot has changed since I was in school. I'll be the first to admit that. Back in my day, we didn't have shiny tablets or fancy gadgets to help us learn. Today, you have all these incredible tools at your fingertips. Technology is fantastic, no doubt about it. But don't be afraid to pick up a book.
There are 1,600 schools in the state, and only one could get the governor there to kick off Read Across America Week. Now, your commitment must be to read a lot of books this week. And so I know you've got some guest readers coming in even today, and I hope that you're going to do lots of reading. Make yourself better readers, because that's what makes you strong students, and that's what makes a great Alabama.
Those students also surprised State Superintendent Eric Mackey with a special tribute on his birthday.
Thank you.
And boys and girls, we have a little special small cake for him.
Got
and
it.
That's from our elementary school.
Thank you very much.
Happy birthday, Dr. Mackey. Coming up next, I'll visit with Dr. Kimberly Robinson, CEO and Executive Director of the U.S. Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville. After that, I'll sit down with Executive Director of the Alabama High School Athletic Association, Alvin Briggs, about the successful high school basketball championships that just concluded. We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Tuesday is Space Day here in the State House and in the larger Capitol complex. And joining me next to talk about it is Dr. Kimberly Robinson, CEO and Executive Director of the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Dr. Robinson, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Todd.
Well, this is exciting. It's one of these things every year we look forward to. I know maybe during COVID we didn't get to have it as much, but this is when U.S. Space and Rocket Center, NASA, Marshall Space Flight Center, some of the other companies involved in the space industry there come down from Huntsville and share a lot of what's going on in the space community with us in the State House. So talk about Space Day, why it's important, and maybe what we can expect.
Well, sure. So we're very excited to be here as part of NASA's Space Day in Montgomery. I will tell you, we have a big day planned for tomorrow. We were going to be outside more, but due to the weather, we've moved all indoors. Okay. But we will have about 300 students from across the region join us, along with the director of Marshall Space Flight Center, the head of UAH, as well as a NASA astronaut. Raja Shari will be there to talk with the students and try to help inspire people to consider going into the aerospace industry. The aerospace industry is very important to the state of Alabama.
Absolutely.
And has a large economic impact to us here. And so we're glad to bring the stories of what's going on in it to the Montgomery area.
A real live astronaut right here in our building. All right, so to me, that's a hero. That is like, growing up, loving space stuff, that's going to be really cool. You had an op-ed in today's Daily News talking about the importance of, why it's important to come down here, not just depend on everybody to remember that it's in Huntsville, but to show up and help lawmakers maybe understand just the impact that the space community has in there. Talk a little bit about why that's important.
Well, sure. At the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, first of all, from 2019, we have about $135 million economic impact to the state and more than 2,000 jobs ourselves. And that's just telling the story about the aerospace industry. The aerospace industry, of course, is much larger in the billions of dollars of impact to the state. And so we are glad to come down here and talk about what we do. We help to give informal education on STEM subjects to try to inspire people to study more science, technology, engineering, and math. So the Space Camp, which is housed at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, has more than 1 million graduates. And every year we have people coming to either the museum or to this camp from every state in the country and more than 70 different countries around the world. So we tell this story very broadly, and sometimes we're the only location that people travel to in the state of Alabama. So we want to make sure that we're representing Alabama and that everyone understands the stories we're telling.
What a great impression of Alabama to be, Space Camp and everything associated with the Space and Rocket Center. I read somewhere where it's maybe the longest actual continuously operating STEM school or lab or what have you in the whole country. That's really amazing. That's Space Camp.
That's right. We operate through the moniker of Space Camp. We operate not only the longest running at almost 42 years this summer, but also the largest STEM camp in the world.
Wow, STEM camp. And if you're lucky enough to go to Space Camp, that's pretty cool. It's interesting to me because all the times I've been to the Space and Rocket Center, including that really formative field trip, I think it was 5th grade or 6th grade. I mean, goodness, that was awesome. But the things that I saw there were probably in a different than where the exhibits you have now. I'm thinking you had stuff from the Apollo programs in the 60s, all that excitement. Space Shuttle was still a big deal, back then. So talk about the challenge of, in Space Camp, in Space and Rocket Center, bridging that gap between the 60s, maybe the 80s, and the newer things that are happening in NASA today.
That's right. And of course, we still talk about space history and what happened through all of those decades. And we're spending, money to make sure that those are all refreshed exhibits so we can keep them on display for many, many years. But now we're also telling the story in our latest exhibit called Dare to Explore, the New Frontier. And what we're doing is telling the story of space today. We've entered into a new golden age of space exploration, and so with the United States leading the way. And so in there we have exhibits showing what's happening from Space Launch System and the Artemis program to Blue Origin and their New Shepard, and moving on to New Glenn rockets. We have the Starship from SpaceX, and we have one of the only SpaceX crew suits that the astronauts wore. This one was worn by Chris Sombrowski, on display in the country. We just had going off display the Perseverance rover, and the Ingenuity helicopter from Mars. So we're constantly telling people about, yes, this is how we started. These were the great glory days of Apollo, but the story continues. And even today, there's great work going on, especially the work at NASA Marshall, where they're working on habitats. They're working on landers for landing on the moon. And you know, we're very proud to say that the Artemis astronauts that are chosen that will be flying on Artemis 2 around the moon, one of them is a space camp graduate as well.
How about that? I was just thinking, you know, is there a space camp student now, or maybe in the years to come, who might be the first to Mars or something like that? And that's an exciting concept.
It certainly is, and it certainly inspires us to get up every day and do our best to try to inspire that next generation.
Awesome. And while I've still got you, y'all also provide, not just for students, but for educators, some resources there.
Absolutely. We really, really enjoy having our Space Academy for educators. And, you know, when the Teachers of the Year from all across the country, from each state and from each territory, when they get awarded the Teacher of the Year, they get awarded a trip to Space Camp and to our wonderful education and continuing development program for teachers. But in the state of Alabama, we also do it for the teachers in Alabama. And so we bring them in. So far, let's see, I think we've done 700 so far since the inception of the program in 2016. And I think we have about 150 more slated for this summer. But what happens is when we can teach a teacher and provide her with her or him with the resources that they can take back and the inspiration into their classroom, we find that we have a multiplication factor and we can reach a lot more students through the teachers.
Wow, I didn't think about it like that. You're right, because they go back excited, ready to share, and the cycle maybe hopefully continues. Well, that's fantastic. Hey, thank you so much for coming on the show to share about all you're doing at U.S. Space and Rocket Center at Space Camp. And we're excited for Space Day tomorrow, always one of our favorite days on the calendar. And let me mention this, you know, we're trying to go around the state to get out of Montgomery a little bit more and come places. So we'd love to come to Space and Rocket Center and really showcase a lot of that for our statewide audience.
And we would love to have you, so please consider this an open invitation. We actually, you know, we film a lot of movies on site, so we'd be happy to come and be the background for that story, so just let us know when.
Here we go. Capital Journal comes to Space and Rocket Center. Well, Doctor, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Joining me next is Alvin Briggs, Executive Director of the Alabama High School Athletic Association. Mr. Briggs, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
We've had a big week, haven't you?
Oh, it's been an exciting week. It's been fun. We were able to bring 56 schools to the Birmingham area, and it's always great to have that many communities ascend on one of our own communities here in the state of Alabama.
Yeah, the high school basketball championships, we aired them here on APT. And I was telling you before, I probably got more feedback about these championships than even the football that was on. Maybe the word's out that this is where things are being aired, but also so many schools involved, right? Even if your son or daughter isn't playing on one of these teams, you want to see it when they go to the championship game. So it was really well viewed, I believe. It
was. You know, previously we've had television companies that was only in segments of the state. But what Alabama Public Television does is give us the entire state. And when the athletic communities, even though there's communities 50 miles down the road, I know people in that community because that's how well we're connected in Alabama. So we get the viewership, and that's the whole thing about it. You know, when Jack Williams came to us a couple of years ago and presented this model, and it was a great model for everybody, and knowing that the entire state would be covered is awesome. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we're proud to host it. It's fun to be able to not only offer that service, but to make sure everybody, you know, it gets covered. And I heard, like I said, some really good feedback. The commentators were very good. A friend of mine told me this is every bit as good as you'd see, you know, for a college broadcasting. That it was there for high school, including a commentator from here in the legislature, Mr. Blackshear, right?
Yeah, you know, Chris has done a phenomenal job with high school athletics. over his years. I mean, even though he is a sideline reporter for Troy, he does a phenomenal because he loves high school athletics. That's the one thing Chris does. He loves high school athletics. Been involved as long as I've been in the association. And then we had Bart Heiss, who's another former basketball player from the state of Alabama that played at Mississippi State, and Kevin Skarbinski, who did the halftime. Kevin's been around a long time. Matter of fact, I've known Kevin about 40 years. He was a beginning writer with the Birmingham News when I was playing college football at Auburn.
How about that? Wow, that takes you back.
Yeah.
He did do a good job, and he did a good job with football too. And one of those very well-known, not just voices but faces, to those that care about sports and everything. So it's a really good opportunity to get that. Well, look, it must be really challenging to put on an event like this, maybe even more than football, because you got so many teams, one after the other. You got the boys and the girls. Talk about what goes into preparing such a monumental, endeavor.
Our staff has already started for next year. I mean, it comes whether we have a saying, the event's going to happen whether you're ready or not, so you might as well get ready. We're very fortunate that it's 30 years ago that Mr. Washburn and the Birmingham Tip-Off Club started having what we have now as our state final. We're the only state association that has the boys and the girls at the same time.
Really?
Everybody else does it, have the boys one week and the girls one week, or they'll do one format, and it's just, matter of fact, for some of them, like the state of Kentucky, it takes 3 weeks. So to have it and have all those communities, especially if you have double teams there. If you're lucky enough that your girls and boys, both teams are there and everybody's there watching, and when you're in the same classification, those games are going to happen back to back. So it's great for the community. They're there to see both and give both teams the same atmosphere. If you do it separately, somebody's going to get left behind, but you're just doing it together. And behind the scenes, the biggest thing that we have going for us is the fact that we have so many volunteers. There are over 500 volunteers that send that Birmingham Tip-Off Club to help with that event. And you can't find that anywhere. And they all love basketball, and they all love high school athletics, and they put a lot of effort into it. And they plan their vacations around that. Some of them take the whole week off to do those things, and some of them come in and there. But it's just, there's a couple that's in the back handling hospitality that drives from Decatur, Alabama. Every morning they would get up and leave at 4 o'clock, and they would bring other volunteers breakfast. I mean, it's just those little small things that people don't think about that people are doing that makes it, the actual ball game look so easy, but there's a lot of moving parts behind the scene.
Yeah, which is why I asked, and you got to love ball to make that drive every day. And you mentioned double team, a boys and girls team both going. That happened when I was in high school at Prattville. Both the boys and the girls. My brother played on the boys team, but we both lost in the first round. It was back in the Final Four format and all that.
I have a little trivia from you.
Okay.
The Prattville head coach now was on that girls team.
That's right.
And Prattville's been to the Final Four 4 times, and she's been involved in all 4 times.
That's right. Yeah, we like our 90s Lions, 90s and 2000s Lions. But I think back to then, and it was the old BJCC. But it looks a lot different now with all those renovations. So was that a treat to be able to have the kids, the students, play in a world-class facility?
Well, because of what the city of Birmingham's done and being involved with the New Orleans Pelicans basketball league, they have what they call their G League team, their second league. And so in order to do that, Legacy Arena, which is part of the BJCC, upgraded the facilities because what they need to do is be in line with the NBA. And because of that, it gives our student athletes the greatest atmosphere to be in. Everything is plush, it's close, it has a great lightings. The floors that we use are the NBA floors that they use on a nightly basis, you see on ESPN. So they get the best of both worlds.
It's kind of even just feel different when you're dribbling.
Oh,
is it?
Yeah.
I'm getting the image of in Hoosiers, they go to the big place, they got to measure everything just to get it done. Well, look, congratulations again on successful high school basketball championships. I heard nothing but compliments, and I know you may get a lot of questions from how are we going to do this again? How do we replicate that success? But I have no doubt that you and your team will do it again.
Well, all the thanks go to APT because of and I'm going to use Jack. If Jack hadn't had the vision of putting on our events and putting them on Alabama Public Television, we wouldn't be where we are now. And because of that, and giving all our communities a chance to view all our athletics across the state, it wouldn't be possible. So hats off to ATP. Thank them for allowing us to be a part of this great partnership. And I'm looking forward to big and better things. Jack is all excited. He and I have a meeting later this week to talk about next year. So that's what I like. So we're getting ready to get involved and get ready for next year.
That sounds right. It sounds about like Jack. Jack, Wayne Reed, our executive director,
yes.
A whole team at APT, and we're proud to be a part of it. So, all right, Coach, thanks again.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
At 2 p.m. on February 16, 1968, the very first 911 call was made in Haleyville, Alabama. The call was made by State Representative Rankin Veit from Haleyville Mayor James Witt's office and was answered by U.S. Representative Tom Bevel at the Haleyville Police Station on a bright red telephone that was given to the city by the Alabama Telephone Company. Haleyville still celebrates their part in 911 history with an annual festival.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night with more coverage of the Alabama legislature right here on Alabama Public Television. And don't forget that tomorrow is Election Day. Please remember to get out and vote. Polls are open from 7 to 7 in every Alabama county. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.